Bible for the Bible study, and I briefly looked at a couple of one of the chats that appeared. When I do the lives, it doesn't show me the entire chat activity. It kind of, I'm not sure how what it does or doesn't show of the chat. But I was looking at the back at the chat that it showed at the end as I was wrapping up the video, and it said, "Hey brother." You know, one was like take a break, brother, which is also slow your roll, which is also check yourself, which is also monitor your voice, which is also adjust your voice, which is also don't be all of yourself as you would choose to be, as you have the liberty to. Because like a lot of these, I've said in other videos that ostensibly online, like on YouTube, I have the potential to upload content to YouTube from a smart device. I would otherwise likely make more videos because they'd be more like maybe digestible, or like more because I'm not engaging with the chat or the population, population meaning like the people that come into the population of any particular chat. I'm not dealing with it based on the engagement or even the presence of any one or number of people, which it can fluctuate a little bit, but it's not like profound numbers in itself. But for me, it's a lot. For an actual human being, it's a lot to have another person interested in what you have to say at all, up to 20 people at all. Because you imagine if you're speak like where I'm at, if you had 20 people gathered to listen to you, that's a lot of traction and influence. And it's not less than that because it's online. But ostensibly, I can make content, and I can go on at length. Um, I can go on at length, and there's no and but making the actual good morning, ma'am. Good, but making the video, making the live stream takes less memory on the phone, so I can make more content with live streams and make videos with live streams, but then also have a little bit of engagement. And then on top of making videos, which you're already accountable online to make statements online anyhow, because our words carry weight in any platform or media is like another word for like a mode of communication. That's actually what media, I think a lot of people use the word media and they think that just means like news reporters, but actually news reporting is radio media. So like if you have a news anchor or like a weather forecaster, that television is likely being broadcast upon either old school traditional antenna radio broadcast from a local TV station tower, and or digital now, but that would be going by way of satellites, then through cable, then through maybe local satellites. But it's still that whole time radio, both the visual picture and the sound, both those broadcast together, being the show or the episode, but broadcast. That's a radio broadcast. So news anchors and forecasting is radio media. You would call it television media or digital media or cable media, but it's actually truly radio media. But then, like if you write a book, like the Bible itself is media. The Bible is print media because it's communication intended to proliferate. For I'm extrapolating or reasoning is communicate. The simple as I could appreciate it, it would be media communication intended to proliferate to one or more, but likely more members of an audience. So also like propaganda, like if you had like a time, we're always in a time of war on earth. For the duration that the earth has been alive, there's not been not a time of war. Either wars are cold or hot, or we're contending with the environment, or we're contending one another, or we're even contending with ourselves in managing our health, managing our sense of happiness, our contentment, and which amounts to health. And so we're inimical insects, agreeable food sources, and overindulging that. Anything can actually be a detriment to the point of war. But life is always war, and it fluctuates. But so most of the things you could actually say that all media, I'll be so bold as to say all media is actually propaganda because it has an intended effect. That's one thing that I couldn't excel at in school well. In some of my classes in college, like in high school too, for that matter, like my uncle, I have my mother's older brother. My mother's near about the oldest child in her family, but her older brother, he was like a lifelong learner. He graduated college at like 40, And back in the day, like that was atrocious. Like for politically correct purposes, my father said derogatory things about that, and I'm sure he had to contend with different degrees of stigma and ostracism for being an advanced, for being a non-traditional student, but yet still graduating with a history degree. Also, that degree, history, was somewhat mocked in the past as a useless undertaking, but that was truly his passion and thereby his vocation in life. And similarly, I studied at near about that same age range, a little bit less in my early to mid 30s. But I'm still intending to do more scholarship in my life, whether academic and not. And I went for songwriting. This very channel is about, I started it for songwriting, and I'm still making it to share my path as a songwriter, which I've been doing as much off camera since I started the channel. But my sharing of this, the Bible, and the different books I'll be uploading and all the content is to help people appreciate learning at all, truth at all, for the purpose of bringing out one's voice. But still, anything. But when I'd be in these classes, so when my uncle met he bumped into my high school English teacher, unbeknownst to me. Like, he was somewhere, and that was Mr. I can't remember that guy's name. Mr. He was a nice guy. He was an older white American guy, a little bit heavy set. But he every once in a while you come across a teacher that actually loves teaching and loves their subject. That's a blessing. That's their vocation at that point. Anyone that lands on their vocation, it's a blessing to themselves and others. So in your school career, you're peppered with a few teachers that are not in it for the money per se. They're actually in it because that's their true gift, calling, passion, interest, vocation. So this teacher was like that, and he bumped into my uncle, who's also a lifelong learner and scholar at history. That guy's near about peer in history, but I don't think my uncle worked in history, but he just loved studying history. And told my uncle that he taught at Central High School, where I'm from, and in St. Paul. And my uncle was like, wait, do you know my nephew? He's like, wait, your nephew? Yeah, what's your nephew's name? He's like, such and such. Such and such is your nephew? Wow, that young man is in my class. Do you know he had a response in my class that was such and such and such? I was such and such and such. Then before that happened, that was in high school. Then like in 8th grade, I was in sport. 7th grade was rough for me. Like 7th grade is one of the roughest points in childhood. I think that each year of childhood is very each year of a person's childhood is very pivotal and informative, but each year is completely different, and it's appreciated by and large that for many, not necessarily all, depending on your background, your orientation, and your circumstance. 7th grade is one of the hardest years in a child's life for a lot of people because it's the demarcation, the end of elementary. Of some could say that elementary is a little bit coddling, but also my father worked in education, and he studied the works of Pablo Freire from Brazil, who he's an actual revolutionary and freedom fighter on the education side. His statements and what he's offered to the human condition in terms of his scholarship, and he's actually been banned from some of the highest venues of a higher tier education in the United States, at least some of your private schools, at least. And that actually is a testimony to the actual power of his work, because he's being censored at that point, and you normally don't censor or contend with things that aren't actually viable and active and live. So my dad studied him. I mentioned on the previous video that my dad was a professor. My father's degree in college was in academic administration. So like your principles, how to run schools and school districts, is what I can understand about that, generally not having studied it. How to run a school and or school district is what academic administration is, and also to understand how schools impact their students and communities. So like my father's dissertation was on high school dropping out of high school in Africa, the dropout rates and how that affected social metrics and statistics. So my dad actually has a background in statistics in African American history in America, and he has a lot of background around political things. He has experience in politics because he was within the ranks of freedom fighting himself as a student in Africa, and then before leaving Africa, which made it more difficult for him to leave. But then he studied politics, and he's very well versed in politics and also history of America and Africa. And my father didn't do hardly a lot of any. My father did alcohol, but he didn't do very much of any drugs. If you meet an adult man that never really touched a lot of drugs, like especially like marijuana or anything more than that, a lot of times they have a little bit of a stronger command of history and details and references than a normal person who has experienced drugs. I think because for most people that have experienced drugs, it alters your minds. You're never the same after taking drugs. And there's a few times in my life when I get for Jason Black, the YouTuber, is another man who has not done. He, according to his own testimony, he hasn't partaken of marijuana, and he's a near orator in that he can cite references, dates, concepts, and people and names, like almost like encyclopedic like knowledge and oratory would be Jason Black on online. Then also Tashreeq Bey, Grand Sheikh Tashreeq Bey, who I cite, is another. Both of those men are scholars in their own right and have a lot of life experience on top of that, and orators in their own life, right? Then Tashreeq Bey is similar. He has that same scope and command of history, learning, and he's also can sing. Tashreeq Bey. Then my father is like that too, and my father can also sing. He doesn't fancy. My father, I actually got on to being a musician because my father always had instruments laying around my whole life, and my father would perform his whole life, and he had performed as a child. My father would play for himself, and my father was romantic, and he plays the romantic guitar. But my father grew up in a little band that they put together, partly for being entrepreneurs, but partly because he had musical talent. But then all I'm saying is that some of those gifts run together. Oratory, being able to I've been cited by my cousin as having a proficient memory, because one time I remembered things about her father and my late aunt. Their home is in like detail that it would move people sometimes. Sometimes my memory my awareness of facts and occurrences can move people, and that partly has to do with my sensation of the present moment, from an insight that I came across in the Wu-Tang manual, that I've talked about before, and I may talk about again. But so my father is, so some of these people I've appreciated have these orators have incredible memory, scholarship, and learning in their own right as an interest that attends that, interest in history, and interest in social and political things, and that's what it would mean. But that's also part of my father's training as a to be in academic administration. But what my father taught me is that when a child experiences, so you have a fetus, you have conception, you have an embryo, you have a fetus, you have the different stages of a fetus. You have either a neonatal, that'd be a baby that's born premature, or a regular natal, and then sometimes you have babies that gestate a little bit too long. A baby's supposed to be born about 9 months and a couple or 3 or several weeks, and then once it gets to getting close to 10 months, that's a long time for a baby, and that could potentially be a stillbirth or very dangerous for the mother or the baby if they would gestate too long. But then after that, you have a newborn, then you have an infant, then you have like a 1 year old, which is still about an infant baby. Then once you get to 2, you have like about a toddler, like maybe 2 to 3, and two is appreciated as incredible for the development of a child, and one of the most difficult periods for raising a child. And I understand from some of my childhood friends that have had children that refer to things like the terrible twos. 3 is properly a toddler. Then 4, it would be like an older toddler, and then now 5 is about like a child, is now a young child. But that'd be the point. A child would be beginning either preschool, pre-K as a toddler, pre-K as an older toddler slash new child, and or a child in kindergarten. But at that entire time, that space, there's a child's mind. They don't know the difference between their mother's attention.
Oh hell no!
Their mother's attention. Well, I got to take a break right here. This is a real homie right here.
Is begging for attention. We got little kids out here fucking wham because they never got attention. It's like, bruh, what do you need? They say attention.
What I was saying right here is that to a child, they don't understand the difference between their parents, their nursery, their home, and the school and the bus. That's right. All one experience to a child.
Everyone out here is still living in the fucking child development phase of wanting attention.
And
they never escaped the fucking like 0 to 3 because they never got attention. And they fucking act out on the streets wanting attention from anyone possible. and I don't pay attention.
So see if you rock with this, right? I won't take your time too much. This is actually my homie right here. This is Kali. This is my homie. He put me on a lot of game, a lot of swag. Really real. He's a real in it. I really gotta do content with this dude because he made it. So just smile for them one time.
Oh yeah.
This boy been through the hardest shit you can imagine. He came out with that smile because he was that smooth about how he get in and out. But all I'm saying is that for a lot of people,
real convict over here, real felon.
For a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with that because we're in a rat race. We're in a bloody murder game, man. So everybody get it how they live, and sometimes we get caught up, and sometimes we don't gotta do right or wrong to get caught up.
Yes, sir.
But by the time I was saying that 7th grade so each year of a child's life is very pivotal but different from another, and some are pivotal. That I think that 11th grade is like the cusp of high school, because when you're barely in high school, you still have some of the
very impressionable. And it's one of the most important times of a kid's life. Yeah, it's like when it's make it or break it.
Okay,
it's like if they get a positive influence or a negative influence, they're gonna go down a positive path or a negative path. High school is crucial.
Okay, check this out, right? So I was a school bus driver, and one of the other school bus drivers, they said, man, kids are really tough, kids are really resilient. So if you think about it, by the time you're in 9th and 10th grade, you still have some of those childhood graces. Like sometimes childs can be secretive. Like if there's some bullshit, like someone pulled up here popping off, heaven forbid, a child could hide very well because they can actually be deceiving of adults, because that's one of their protected. Otherwise, they're helpless. That's what I was
saying about when you said you could see if it's a nigga or not. Like, no, I can turn into a kid. Yeah.
No, but then also, on top of that, they can be naive and resilient. That's all the way up to 9th and 10th grade. But by the time you get to 11th grade, you're now actually a very it's political. It can be arbitrary culturally what's an adult, but you're almost an adult.
If you fucking murder or rob, you're gonna get tried as an adult.
But also you're a fledgling adult because you haven't filled out your personality and your body the same way as a seasoned adult.
I'll get you off.
so you can see the logic. While 11th grade would be, but then now the time you're 12th grade, you got freedom on
child development at CSU Chico. Okay. And it's very like the main thing is it's crucial time in their life, and a lot of these people on the streets, a lot of us I was thrown to the trenches at 15. I got sent away to boarding school.
Okay, no, but where I was going with this one, the reason I brought up those years is because I was thinking that I've heard that 7th grade is one of the the first year of middle school is one of the hardest years in a child's life, because you're going from being coddled and the sensation of school as a home to now being cut loose, also with older people, also with background. You're not savvy yet.
You have to manage 6 classes suddenly. You see these kids that have mustaches,
and your teachers aren't pulling no punches with you, and also you're aware that your success there is beginning to affect your real future, because it's going to affect your high school.
And you have a teacher that's allergic to cologne and you don't even know, and she has a panic attack. It's like, bitch, calm down.
so I got but I got this one today was a Bible study, but I was forgetting why I was referencing a little bit about development. But what I wanted to get back to, but we're gonna do more content with you, bro. You got more to share on. That's my friend Callie. But so what I'm saying is that so I have been I was going somewhere with that. I have been so for me, when I barely first got to 7th grade, that was a rough year for me for like figuring out where I fit in. But then by 8th grade, I got to figure out better, and I figured out my lane. And I was an athlete, but a little bit of an antisocial athlete, and a little bit of I had some of my first propensity for academics begin. I had better marks in 8th grade in my classes like geography, math, and philosophy. And so I was bringing up the class philosophy because I had this class philosophy in 8th grade. And when I made they're asking something about like, what do you think about technology? Like, where is technology leading us? And is technology making life better? And I was like, yeah, technology is making your life better and better, slicker and faster. But it's like racing for a damn cliff, because it has no end in sight, and it has no humane outcome and objective other than efficiency for its own sake. Almost like as a fetish and as an ideal and an idol is efficiency in production and productivity. And I don't see that as actually humane and equitable of human outcomes, nor balanced and congruent. And I have a little bit more I want to say about that today. Another example of that is, as an aside, I think that I was talking to that man about the development of children, but most children and people grow up a lot in cars. So your whole time going to school, you were on the bus, or you're getting driven to school. Likely, if you weren't in an exceptionally old, almost like old-fashioned, or maybe auspicious setting, like where you live within walking distance, like that does happen too, where parents will walk their children to school. But if you think of, I mean, if you remember your early years, right? Like, so when you're very, very young, right? The first, when you go up on a freeway, that feels good. Like when your parents like drive, when they join the freeway, or your bus joins the freeway, you're like, whoa, we're going now. And that car's like, and it's overcoming resistance, and it's overcoming the slow traffic, and it's getting you places. And that engine means business, and also that engine is benefiting you. It's an advantage. That's a profound sensation. That's called careening. The sensation of there's another word, I think, careening, and there's a sensation of what it means to enjoy whirling in a car. The actual sensation of going up a mountain, going down a mountain. I think it's the same. Like when I was a kid, there used to be like this dirt hill, and on special days, a teacher at the end of the day, for like 5 minutes before we're released, the teacher would let us run and jump down the dirt hill. That sensation of like falling, but like down a dirt hill like that. That's one of the greatest sensations for a child. Climbing a tree is one of the funnest things for a child, but also running down a hill is very fun for a child. It's thrilling, but I think it's similar to what we experience in cars and in on bikes and in airplanes. It's like running, but funner than running, because running is fun for children, but as much of it is fun, it's always taxing. So, but also like children, it's just children have like a lot of hope, so they're like, when are we gonna run some more? But it's not quite as fun as like running is an advantage. Running, so but when you're running, like you're having fun, your only advantage is like the cool shoes you have, or your belief in yourself, and hey, I'm better than everybody, and I got the cool shoes, so I'm gonna smoke everybody. That's the advantage you have, but it's of your own. But when you're running down a hill, or you're on a bike, or you're in a go-kart, or you're in a car, or you're on a skateboard or skates, you're having the same fun of running, but that too with advantage. And human beings, we love advantage. So you're feeling power and advantage, and with that also a degree of entitlement as a child. Now, as this man said, is that some of the things that we experience or didn't experience at very young, we replicate that and we seek to imitate that. A deeper thing than what he said is that when people pay attention to you, right, you're actually relaxed in that moment. Most of life, you have like a baseline stress that you're not aware of, and you don't know where it is on your body. It can be anywhere in your body. Like, for example, I was recently in the north, and I had made a friend with a Native American woman the prior spring, and she met me at a venue. She didn't recognize me at first, but then she did. She spent time with me, and she said, "Here, close your eyes." She goes like this. She go behind my ear, and she's like this. She did that as though she was cleaning gunk off of my eyelids and the back of my ears that I couldn't see. What a deeper thing is that my eyelids had not experienced direct attention, that too of a woman. My eyelids had not received attention, the back of my ears had not. Attention actually makes you relax, because attention actually convicts you. When someone pays attention, hey, what you got going on? You're actually surrendering. When you're being paid attention to, you're surrendering in that moment. You're surrendering your attention back and your statements back. So actually, when, like, if you have a group of people, like, hey, this is Aunt Jane, and this is all these different people, adult figures in your life, not only as a child but also as an adult. Your family, your nuclear family, they have the power over life and death over you. And most of our other things we do in life are for the fear of, or for the sake of advantage in matters of life and death. So your family, your nuclear family, on an instinctual primal level, they have that sway in your life as a child and as an adult to different degrees. Then, but their siblings and their parents, at least their cognates, their relatives, and sometimes even their siblings' children, as in their niece and nephews, they have about as much familiarity with your family, as much of kinship and good and warm feeling and esteem, kindred, but they don't check in with your family the way that you have to, and they can stand up to your family the way you can't, because they have a degree of separation and familiarity such that that's one of the only times that you see your family deprecate to someone else, but not in a derogatory way, like in front of their boss, which wouldn't be honest deprecation. your family shows honest deprecation to your relatives. That is, they honestly care what your relatives think, because that's an instinctual thing that we care about family. But also, your relatives can also show them, they can show them to themselves in a way that you don't get to see. So they have pull in your eyes. Now, when they gang up on you, your relatives and your parents, that's even more of attention and accountability and demand for cooperation that attention implies. When they pay you attention, that actually relieves you, because you're like, oh, I get to actually surrender for a moment, because you don't see that surrender as actually a blessing and an opportunity. Most of the time we carry a lot of tension because we're dealing with a lot of shit. At any age, we're dealing with shit. You're a young person, you're not even school age yet, but here go a commercial advertising something to you that you by no means can afford. So till you come through a lot of school and living, can you be viable to work and afford what they're advertising to you? So that's actually stressing you as a child. You're stressed by what you want and can't have. That's stress. So at any age, there's different stress that we're always going through in life, but it amounts to different tension, and we carry it in our body, mind, and our will, our emotions, mind, will, and heart, or heart, mind, and soul. So when we're paid attention, there's a little barely a release of stress, because you're surrendering when you are paying attention to, yes sir, yes ma'am, yes mom, yes dad, yeah, that actual that little bit of that conviction of surrendering. What do you want to know? Oh, but did you also want to know more, so I can surrender more? Because it actually kind of feels good to surrender to you, because I'm always in a lot of stress, even around mom. But right now, you're actually holding mom's ass to account, and even in front of mom too. So now I get to surrender all this shit that is very cool, and it's on my mind too. But it's also a little bit stressful, because it is great to be me and the things that I can do. But also sometimes people don't let me talk the way I'd like to talk, or they think I actually know what they're talking about, and so I'm actually getting disrespected, even though I think I'm this great. So I want to surrender this greatness back to you, so I can just feel at peace again. That's actually what a child and an adult is thinking in their mind. So the real hustler, he didn't say rise and shine, he said rise and grind, man.
Calisthenics.
Get
the blood flowing to the brain, then you can finish what you're trying to say. You know what I'm saying? You go Super Saiyan.
Okay. This is gonna be a flex. So I hadn't been doing like fitness stuff on the channel, but this is gonna be a flex because I just got called to the carpet. A co-sensei master, we're gonna have to square this away. But rather than tap out, I'm gonna see if I can get an angle to do some calisthenic shit in front of the worldwide ether web shit, and then my statements will be more congruent because I'm talking about the logo today. So let me see if I can pop this. You can see what you can see what we're about to get into.
And get the blood to flow to the brain. Go ahead and rotate your dome. Stretch out your limbs.
Ooh, I'm about to get some fancy. And I got
Drain
this t-shirt that
the lymphatic nodes.
T-shirt.
Oh, you rocking the SK?
I feel like a millionaire.
SK, right? Secret knot. If you're not, keep it a secret. You know this. You know in America, the secret knock is the. That's KKK. You gotta know.
Damn, I would have never known that.
You gotta know.
I was telling someone yesterday at the door. I was like, "Damn, he put some swag on the knock." He's like, "He did something cool like that. He put some swag on."
Yes. I think that man got the swag. Dave,
you know, it's running right now.
Okay. Let me.
Oh no! You gotta start with the Yes, sir. We're doing the goddamn push-up in the goddamn morning. Yes, sir. Because we need the goddamn blood flowing so we can have a great day. Yes. And we gotta do the push-ups all that damn time so we can do them when we need to do the goddamn push-up like that. And then when we can't, we gonna let it all hang out. Yes, sir.
I got gas.
Oh.
I got gas. This opens up everything, and you can push into your armpits and open up your like these muscles right here. Fucking remember, and that doesn't matter. But you always keep out grip on
that's a cool. No, I should whatever because I had an idea to load up. That wasn't bad. Just to get some blood from so I could do better.
All right, here I go back. So I'll finna say, seventh grade can be like that. Then when I got into 8th grade, I had that commentary, and then when I made that statement in front of my philosophy class, it impressed my teacher a lot. He was like, damn. He had a reaction like that. And then there's this pretty girl, she was like, she was a pretty girl. She was attractive, but she wasn't like a mean girl. But none of them mean girl parties and cool ass parties happened unless she had to do with it, because she was like well-to-do, and she had a talent for organizing. My mom was like that. My mom was very talented at organizing. She like organized these basketball tournaments where I'm from, and one of the characters in Breaking Bad, the TV show, attended those tournaments in our neighborhood. It was like a gated, not gated because it's fancy, but it was in central Albuquerque, but they had a gate to protect it because it had children and families in there. And that person from Breaking Bad, his cousin was one of my neighbors in the next complex over, one of the cool older kids that always be popping off fireworks and shit like that. And the ones that were like a little bit illegal fireworks, not illegal, but like the high tier fireworks, the actually more cooler fireworks. And then that kid from Breaking Bad would come over there, and he was on my team, and he was already in movies back then, and he was in the movie Natural Born Killers at that time, and he had like fly shit. And then later, I saw that he was in Breaking Bad, and he's in other things, great things besides that. My mom would organize cool things like that. But then this girl was like that too, and I got onto that party. But all I'm saying is that I had traction verbally, so I had traction speaking in front of in the philosophy class with that English teacher, and then I had similar statements like when I was in high school and I was in college, in my my English class. My English teacher was like, man, your papers are your writing is far beyond that of your peers, but I don't understand why you don't use punctuation. It's because I didn't always pay attention in school, but my mom spent time reading with me, so I could understand what I was reading, but I didn't actually understand punctuation. And if you don't understand punctuation, you can't fully understand what you're reading, because the punctuation is also communicating as is the text. It's like to know the difference between, like, if you have those two dots like that, a colon, that sets off like a list, or that whatever was referred to it sets that off and it highlights that. If you have the dot with the little thing under it, like the semicolon, that's like a conjunction, a compounded sentence. So if you have like a sentence, a double sentence, or even a triple sentence, a very long sentence, that's what the semicolon's for. Then if you have that dash at the end, that's like to give like if you say people in Nigeria people from Kenya are great runners, and then if you put that thing at the dash like that, when I meet them, I'm not an editor at that point, but if you can understand what the punctuation is doing, it keeps you from getting lost in the text and for you to losing grasp of what's being said, and for it doesn't sound like this. Seem like even if you saw a really long sentence that was actually worthy of being published, you wouldn't lose your attention in the sentence. You could keep a grasp of what's being said by the punctuation. But if you didn't know what the punctuation said, you say, well, it get a little bit long like that. But the reason she would have been saying that is because at that time I had done a lot of reading, and like I said, read the Gideon's Bible by then, but I didn't do it out of my mouth. So I'm not saying that I grasped or was cognizant of all of it, but I looked at it. And then I remember like at the end of that school year, my first year in college, but I was like 25, I was a non-traditional student. She was like, your maturity is far beyond that of your peers. And then I had another professor when I was later in line on college on Berkeley, and we had to upload all of our papers together, and we'd have to review each other's papers, and then his reviewing and commentary on our paper was public to everyone. He's like, man, this paper is the best paper in the class, man. fuck all these other assholes, man. That's not about some bullshit. This is about the best paper in the damn class right here. He said that like that. But all I'm saying is that so I could write, right? I did that. But then I got in other classes where it's like a business oriented or English, and they want you to write a specific way. No, we want you to write like this, and we need you to cut this out because they're curating your message. It has to be dialed in like that. Now, some of the other things I wrote, you could have made them, you could have said, yeah, that's a run on this and that, but I was getting my point across and I was offering insight that those teachers like. But by the time you get into a real dialed in English or business class or like media class, they want it so neat and effective to pack a lot of punch, just like a media editor or media content team would be. And what I'm saying is that's an example of media, because media at that point, when it's not just inspiration, then it has a bent and it has an intended outcome, so it's propaganda. So I'm saying what I would write because I'm interested in sharing ideas, like for philosophy or what we were talking about in literature. That was actually literature I had that teacher, not English. Or music. That other one was music. These are things that I care deeply about, and the punctuation, yeah, we can follow that up, but I care less about the punctuation than what I'm trying to say. And someone reading it can rock with it. Music is similar too. You can do this professional, technical music thing, but that's not necessarily the same as someone with just passion. And someone with just passion that can use and or dispense with the technicalities of music can sound better because they've retained their actual feeling. That is the initiative. Like that stuff we were doing there, like the exercises there, I was busting out some shit. My friend was busting out some shit. But if we're trying to follow a strict regimen, do this, then that, then this and that, and also you know what you're about to do, that could actually make you more daunted because you're having more of a mind. And according to Arthur Avalon, where there's no mind, there's no limitation. So when you don't have another word for mind is a preconceived understanding of something. That is a bias. If you don't have bias, you're stronger. So that too, if you're writing off from the heart, the punctuation can be cleaned up a little bit secondary, but when you lead with punctuation and efficiency prior to the message, that's about as much of a mind you can have. That's a pre-intended outcome. That's actually technically manipulation, whether it's righteous and effective or not. You're wanting to get someone else over here to think this thought, to make this decision. You're leading someone, guiding someone according to your own understanding. Whether you are falsifying something or not, or intending yourself as being honest, you still have just that standpoint. You already have a bias because you may not know another person's experience. That's one of our prerogatives in this world, is that our experience is unto our own because we've had to suffer and pay for it. The only time you know another person's experience is when you're sharing, like maybe fighting and or sharing glory. But so I'm saying all media is propaganda from that standpoint because it's a curated, intended message. So whether it's radio media, that is phones, computer devices that are communicating, that's radio media. Whether it's printed media, the Holy Bible itself as it's been translated and handed on and manipulated and edited by men, and a flyer on the ground for an advertisement for a party, for an apartment. For example, there was an advertisement for an apartment where I come from in the summertime, and I sent a text to the number, right? They saw the way that my name looked and whatever my message was, it never got the hell back to me. They could have said, oh yeah, we filled this up. They never got the hell back to me. Now, that paper says, hey, come check out this cool shit right here. Yeah, you there, that would be cool enough to be at this cafe. I texted, nah man, the opportunity wasn't for someone that looked at you. So that actual flyer was propaganda, it was bullshit. It had you thinking something about your area that's different than what it is. You can sign up for this cool shit over here. I might have been planning for that. I might have actually delayed leaving somewhere or made an adjustment based on thinking that was viable, but it was not viable. So that was bullshit propaganda. So I'm saying when you communicate any captured message, any captured encapsulated message that's intended for one or more is media. And it's actually also propaganda at all. If it has any intention at all other than pure inspiration, then it's propaganda. But the content that I want to come with today is that I was saying something that I think may be unique for people. So I want to start this Bible series by going painstakingly, and I want to go through the introduction, which talks about some of it actually is honest, this book, in conceding some of the actual, they go into some of the editing decisions and how certain verses in the Bible were actually omitted because they were appreciated as redundant, and in doing so, they actually omitted what may be the most salient and key verse in the Bible itself. If the Bible is something about the inspiration of this existence, the cause of this existence, they may have actually omitted the actual real true viability. And if you, so some people say they're a theologian, right? If you're a theologian and you want to study about life, about what you call God by means of the Bible, what are you intending to understand about the Bible first? I'm sorry, God, the Bible, and this universe that's inspired by God by being a theologian. Maybe the trajectory and the histories and the lineage of the line of Abraham, which is the chosen people, and has by extension benefited but also set the values for the world over. And a lot of when you say, hey man, that's by law, when you say by law, that's by the courts, by the state. The state is owned by the church, and you also swear upon a Bible, and the values in the West are Jewish and or Christian by and large, as it's been affected by the Roman Empire to present, to my take. And so and also even the very literacy, if Rome had literacy, I think the Semitic people were one of the first people to be literate. That's going beyond my actual background, but I know that like our numeral system, the Hindu Arabic numeral system based on our digits, that comes from the Middle East, like Mesopotamia, but then extending as much as Africa. According to Tashik Bey, the Middle East and Africa and Asia are one land mass and one people, but by diverse people and different ethnicities, but one actual contingent of people is Asia. Africa in the older books would be called Asia Minor, and then you have Asia, and then the Middle East is also Asia. And the calling of the Middle East and Africa as distinguished in import from Asia, that's a part of social engineering, according to Tashik Bey. But that actual the learning of like what you call like Haikupta or Kemet, also known as Egypt, those schools, Alexandria, Alexander, the Greeks, the Romans, and that too the Indians, and the purpose of the Anglo-Saxons ostensibly inheriting seafaring ostensibly from the Spaniards, who logically would have met the Spaniards met the seafaring Moors. The Moors had been at least North Africa and Spain. Now Spain transfers seafaring capacity, according to Tashik Bey, also sewage curation, which affected the trajectory of the bubonic plague and other maladies of Europe, and the potential for being more of civilized and metropolitan areas for Europe, and then to proliferate from there. But the Anglo-Saxons had been at least third in line. You had the Moors, the Spaniards, the Anglo-Saxons, Britain, and then they had some knowledge of and business of an intention, a sincere initiative, logistics, and organization to sail all the way to India. So what I'm saying is that India would be also inculcated and imbibed in the true history of the connectivity between Asia, that is also what's known as Asia now, at least like maybe like Western Asia, Africa, at least Northern Africa, was called the Middle East, and then also probably likely Europe too, which would be called. There's some deeper history about. I think Europe comes from the word Europa, according to Tashik Bey, and there were African people, melanated people in Europe, also attendant of the fair-skinned, pale people of the Caucasus Mountains, ostensibly the Caucasians, and the melanated of which were the Picts. I think that's one of such group. Just to say that actual history of that whole region is it's not exact. It's a little bit bastardized and fiat at this point. And for layman people, we some of those they would concede that the Library of Alexandria was destroyed. It may or may not have been destroyed because there was actually value and interest in keeping some of that knowledge. But as far as we know, our access to it was destroyed. And at that time, you would have had things like the persecution of people who are called witches in Europe, at least. And these witches, they would be part of things like covens, and then they would have a thing called a grimoire, which would be like a book of recipes and or understandings, and a lot of things are more profound when you write them down. And when they would be seized, I read a book about that. I think it was called The Dictionary of Witchcraft, and it said that when the church would persecute them, they would seize their belongings and value, which was the main objective in persecuting them and indigenous people of the earth. The wizened people of Europe, who would be more natural and, for lack of a better word, pagan, they were treated likely and existed likely and were synonymous with the indigenous people of the earth abroad. So Europe as the status quo church infrastructure is not all of Europe. And so you also had persecution of indigenous people to Europe, the wizened people labeled as witches. Anytime you're gonna victimize people, there's a necessity to dehumanize them, and those are the different labels. So it could be witch here, it could be the different racial terms, and it's different forms of slurs. Nowadays in America, in the West, it'd be the B word. A lot of people are very comfortable calling other, particularly men, a bitch. If you call a woman or a child a bitch, you could be handed your fate by a man. If you victimize a small dog, you can be handed your fate by a man. But if you call another man a bitch, he has to be the one to stand up for himself. So the bitch is actually an operative word, but also a dehumanizing word and a coding that allows violence to take place for a person. But they would have been confiscating that knowledge and relegating it away from the access of normal people. And that's part of, in the old days, you had to matriculate. That is, you had to either afford to be networked in or prove yourself to go to higher education, college. But it doesn't stop there, because even at the colleges, you have different, what are all these different brotherhoods and fraternal orders doing on the exact college campus like that? That's because they have a higher degree. Anything is stratified. So I appreciate college as a networking venue. That's the main objective of college now, because you can access information otherwise. You go to college, you're part of a networking venue. You learn etiquette, how to be believable as a member of the status quo. You get access to information, which is powerful, but you don't get all carte blanche access to all that just because you matriculate to college. Then you may join these brotherhoods and fraternities where there are yet more and higher degrees of knowledge and access to knowledge, understanding, and networking. From there, within there, that's compartmentalized, and that goes higher and higher to what objective, I don't know. But I'm just saying that in layman's terms, we don't have access to the true histories of any region of the earth. North America, Central America, South America, the Caribbean, Australia, New Zealand, the Southeast Pacific, Asia, the Southeast Pacific Islands, Asia, different parts of Western, Eastern Asia, Western, Eastern Russia, Northern, Southern, Central Africa, Europe. We don't have the true, actual, congruent, salient history that's tractionable and actionable upon these, nor to the understandings of these people, the harmonies that made them viable. Because if we did, it would confound our present social construct and caste structure, and the actual enjoyment of private property and privilege and advantage, and the suffering and paying for that in terms of manual labor and diminished outcomes. And so we're deprived of that. But so I'm saying that I don't have a grasp of that, but I do know that a lot of these things came from the same area. But I wanted to say though that I think what I recall of the older versions of the Bible, like the older publications as recent as like the early 2000s, like 2000 would be available in the church like 2005 or 6 or so, was that the Bible, it used to begin with in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. And so it said, so here now it currently says in the NIV version published in 2003, Genesis, the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw the light, it was good, and separated the light from the darkness. What's significant in that and omitted in that, or the thing is that if you're this theological person and you want to learn about life through the Bible, are you intending to learn the histories of the line of Abraham? Because their appreciation of literature, of writing, which was I think maybe began for scripture, their understanding of justice, which is also harmony with divinity, is significant for human beings on the earth, and also for animals and creatures subject to human beings and human being strengths and understanding. That'd be one value in learning about the Bible. Another would be to learn the nature of God and through his actions, statements, decisions, and manner of dealing with, not the least of which, his chosen people and also their foes. That'd be significant. But what's more significant, and then maybe some of the testimony of awesome figures, prophets, the Messiah, no less. But a deeper thing than all that would be, if that is what God has done within the universe, that God has also inspired, wherefrom did the universe come from? Where did God come from in the first place? Then by that, what are we? Where are we? Who are we? Why are we? When are we? Can be extrapolated from that. What I appreciate has been deleted. I went to a church called The Living Word. Now, there used to be I thought it was the first scripture in the Bible was that. I think it used to be in the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth, and God was the Word, and the Word was with God. I think it said that. That's significant because I think that the best way you can describe God is, they say God is an accord. So you have the Trinity, the Holy Spirit, God the Father, and His Son, which is also His Word, because his Son is a fulfillment of His Word, the way by His promise to Abraham to prosper both Abraham and Gentiles. That is, Abraham, the chosen people, the Jews, and non-Jews, Gentiles, was all possible through the man Jesus, because the following of the old laws, the children of Israel were troubled. They would be scattered. They were lost in the wilderness for 40 years. They were troubled. The whole Old Testament, they're troubled that whole time. Lots and lots of endless trouble, not only from opposition but from within. Because in any camp, in any person, in any group, in any faction and organization, you have a combination of fighting from without, which is called opposition, and fighting from within, which is called internecine. That's actually the buoyancy that makes life possible and constantly changing, and also constantly, imminently full of conflict, which amounts to change, but also growth and development and strength and testimony and glory. Such is that they were messing up a lot constantly, and near about to the point of being blighted, similar to Noah's Ark, constantly. But Jesus Christ made Judaism and the older books of the Bible more digestible, stomachable, and viable for both the Jews and the Gentiles by faith in His example, and thereby through faith in His example, the Gentiles are brought into God and His promise the same way as God and His chosen people would be by the Word of God, which is also Jesus Christ. So if God is omnipotent, God is without associate and partner, because a partnership is not the same thing as authorship. That would be a council, but that can be vetoed. If God was anything but conservative, according to Arthur Avalon, God is deathless, weightless, immortal. God is deathless, immortal, and living, current, truly, and hereafter, and heretofore, and here before, because God is wasteless. If God was sharing power, and His decisions could be calibrated, checked, and vetoed by an associate at all, or two or more associates, like a council, partnership, a parliament type arrangement, that's not omnipotence, that's not omnipowerful. So I see, just like you have a mind, a spirit, and a heart, you have God, His Spirit, and His Word, which his Word is both His statement, His command, and His effort, and His sacrament, His sacrifice, and His power expressed is His Word. His desire and His power expressed, and their consequences are His Word. That is logos, thought, verbal form, and idea. It takes effort to have an idea. For you to have an idea, you have to do this much living to be healthy enough to have the standpoint to have enough of leisure. Time is money. Money is power, but also time is also leisure. So leisure is required to even think at all. If you're having your ass, and I began this video exercising. If you're having your ass put to work, you actually can't think when you're working that hard, or you have to be working very, very hard to have enough of clarity to think. That's a little bit of leisure. If you're working so hard that you're comfortable, you had to work past your comfort zone to get comfortable in your discomfort. That actually took work to get to the point of having enough clarity while working to be cognizant enough to ration, reason, think. So in order for you to have an idea, to deal in ideas, to experience ideas, to share ideas, to express ideas, you have to have effort. So all of the effort of the universe, which the universe is a endless, ceaseless motion, that's endless, ceaseless effort. That's viable by a combination of statement, verbal, and idea. It takes statement, cognizance to reason ideas. To have the foothold to have an idea, you have to have. It takes other concepts to form a concept, but it also takes words to manage and be inculcated with concepts, because you can't have a concept. A lot of our concepts are actually handed to us, and then what we do, because they say that even if you're an honest artist or an honest author, there had been influences before you. Even if you're a visual artist, there had been influences before you. Like I grew up, I watched The Wizard of Oz, and I remember those flying monkeys was very influential. There was some cool shit, flying monkeys. To want to be a dancer and be cool like that, you might have had to see some cool thing like a flying monkey, stuff like that. But there's always a lineage to things. So too, ideas and concepts, and that requires the communication, idea and expression of an idea, concept and verbal form, at least as we understand in human terms. That's the logos together. That's actually another name for God. You could say, a lot of people know some sacred solemn names for God. You have Emmanuel, that means God with us. Jehovah Nisi, God with us. Jehovah Jireh, our provider. Oh no, sorry. Jehovah Nisi is our banner. Jehovah Jireh, our provider. Jehovah Sham, our peace. Just Jehovah, I think that means God also. The God of Israel, who is also the descendant of Abraham and still Abraham in that way, and his relationship with God. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Jacob became Israel, the God of Israel, Jesus Christ. And then from other regions of the earth in Islam, you would have Allah. In Bharata, which is the proper name of India, you would have Chid Gana. Chid means consciousness, Gana means greatness. But when it says Gana, that doesn't mean greatness in terms of size. It can actually be greater for being small. Like similar in the book, in the film Men in Black, they had the entire universe encapsulated in a marble like that. Similarly, when a woman in India has that red dot like there, that's called a bindi. That's reminiscent of the red menses of a woman, and the male counterpart of that is the bindu. That's representative of the male contribution and conception. That actual seed form essence contains a child is beautiful. A child is of the universe. A child is the universe. So is any person. That much of potential is within the combination of the bindi and bindu, and that the creativity of that, the vastness of that, the strength of that, it's without scope. So it's vaster than big, and it's smaller than you. If you say unity is almost a redundant statement, because if there is any sensation of more than one, that's not unity. So true actual unity is transcendent, because there's no concept of self and other. However, to have an experience, you need a combination, according to Arthur Avalon, of homogeneity and heterogeneity. Heterogeneity is things being different. Homogeneity is things being same. For a living species, things have to be similar enough that they can form a offspring, and that offspring will still be sexually viable. They have to be of a similar genotype and phenotype, but not the same. And if they are exactly the same, similar, that's also not viable. That's homogeneous. So if you were to mate with your own near of kin, that child won't be viable. That too, if you're in a cloistered environment geographically, where there's not a variation in the actual gene pool, in the dating pool, that also will be attended by health deficits because that's too homogenous. So life itself, reality is similar, is that reality is not, it's not pure chaos. It's chaos. It's order within chaos and chaos within order, but it is both and at once and transcended thereby order and chaos, heterogeneity and homogeneity, roughly speaking. But thereby size as we know it and dimension as we know it can be dispensed with, and it's not exactly okay. So like an example, two people just walk past me, right? That's teachable. When they're 5 feet away, they seem like they're over there, but they're congruent that whole time. Their body's connected, whatever they're on is connected. When they're over there, they're extended from me. Then through spending energy, like they are in a wheelchair, they spend that energy. Now they're up close and personal. I can see them. They appear bigger to me. They actually didn't change. When they're over there, they didn't change. I didn't change. The actual wheel didn't change. The wheel was actually solid that whole time. The actual bearing, the ball bearings didn't change. It rotated, but the bearing itself didn't change. You can't actually say what actually moved. You can't. The only thing that they exerted energy, and they sublimated their position by exerting energy, but nothing actually moved. The wheel was the same. Their body was the same. Their arm was the same. The ball bearing was the same. All things remained the same. Then they come closer. They seem bigger. That actually just went through a dimension right there. That 5 feet away to in front of me, then to away, nothing changed, but it seemed to change. So that is the sensation of a dimension change by the exertion of energy. So thereby, size doesn't have the same meaning that we normally think, and thereby a bindi is the entire universe. Bindu is the entire universe. But I was saying, but as God goes, God, another word for God that I didn't say there, that you may be familiar with, Allah, Chidgana, which means consciousness, but greatness, and the size doesn't matter. It can be small or big. Chidgana is a solemn name. Allah, God, Jehovah, Jehovah Nisi, Jehovah Ra, I forget what Ra means, Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Sham, Jehovah, the God of Israel, Emmanuel, and more names like that. In Africa, where my people come from, I'm not claiming Zulu, but my people are from the Bantu people of Southwest Africa. That name is called Unkulu Nkulu. That's the name in Southern Africa. The only African people that were not conquested by colonialism were the Zulu. They were formidable warriors, and they overcame gunpowder because they had sophisticated tactics of warfare already. Very sophisticated, lethal would be horrible to opposition tactics. Different implements. The colonialists would have been expecting spears, but they had short spears because they weren't trying to throw spears. They're trying to get up close and personal at close quarters with the spear. If you have a firearm, that might be effective as a barrage and cannon fire, but because fights start at a different rate. If people are standing up fighting, they start boxing, then they get into clenching, then they're wrestling on the ground. If two armies are opposed, they start with cannons and gunfire. That's going to take out people, but they're warriors. They're already ready to go. Then it gets close quarters. That Azegai, that short-statured implement is going to be more lethal than trying to fuck around with the firearm at close quarters like that. So they actually were not. They weren't conquested by colonialism until later by economic implications. The experience of South Africa now, but their name of God would be called Unkulu Nkulu. In Japan, they have a name called Kwan Anan. That's a very solemn name, and if you're in inextricable trouble that you can't get past with your own devices, if you state Kwan Anan, you may ascend that, transcend that, according to the book Obadiah Suzuki. But another word for God that people might not be familiar with, that is described by how God is described in the Bible and is leveled in the Bible, is the word logos. And actually, we're beset with logos all the time. That when we say logos for a commercial corporate interest, that's a bastardization of the word logos, but it still functions as logos. That also be, you could say that's another name for the devil. You could say that a logo emblem functioning as a logo emblem for the sake of profit and private interests within within real human affairs and welfare and outcomes. that's actually the devil right there. This cool symbol like that, that symbol is functioning as logos. It contains some of the psychosocial power of logos, but it's not consecrated, it's not sanctified. God himself is free of associates, not even his own image. God is not even associated with his own image. That's why it's actually craven, and it's a desecration, and it's a blasphemy in the sense of the Old Testament to actually even draw. Because if you're drawing something, you're imitating the creator by drawing, and or if you draw something in creation, you're imitating the creator and his authorship of creation. You're mocking, you're aping your imitator. If you make a concept, one of the things, the sticking points of the Old Testament was the attempting, and then the desecration of, in righteous terms, of idols and effigies of greatness of anything. Even if you make a likeness of anything, the most solemn thing you could make a likeness of would be the devil himself, because anything that's worshipful is actually profane if you're making an image of it. The only thing that's greater than anything that can, so the great in this life is not to be, you're not to, according to the old scriptures, you're not to make the likeness of God, because if you do something in the likeness, you're mocking it. Here I go with glasses, right? Say I'm wearing glasses, and somebody that normally doesn't wear glasses, they show up on the camera and they go like this, and then they go like this, and then they take off. They just mocked me right there by making an image of, by replicating me. If someone says something, hey, how are you doing? And you go, hey, how are you doing? You just mock them. If you say, hey man, pick that shit up, I already told you that. When you repeat it to them, you're mocking their intelligence, because you're reminding them of what they already know, because you already said it to them. But also, if you make an image, you're reminding somebody of themselves, God of himself, or you're reminding God's people of him, which he didn't need your assistance for them to be cognizant of him, and he would have made himself known if that had been his purpose. So you're actually blasphemy with any representation of anything. If you're worshiping anything outside of that, it would have to be wicked if it's suitable to make an image of it. So you can do no more than make an image of the devil if you want to make a great image, according to the line of reasoning. So these logos within their emblems are actually, they're all satanic from that standpoint alone. Any logos at all. Even the word logos applied and understood as anything but true word is a bastardization. So you could say that an appropriation of the real meaning of logos, which is God, his word, which is him. God is his word. God is, and another word for that is logos. So God is logos. Any other logo is a approximation, an attempt at that, but it's not that. So it would have to be wrong, but not necessarily unuseful. I'm not trying to fight that, but I'm saying that what's significant in that is that it said that God, from there, what has been deleted and is significant, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. From there, God said, "Let there be light." That statement, "Let there be light," is also what we exist as. So where did the universe come from? You could say the universe, in the purest sense that we can understand, is vibration, and we perceive, all of our senses are different degrees of vibration. Light is perceived by all of our senses perceive a different range of vibration. Our eyes perceive vibration that we perceive as light. We actually don't see light. We perceive light by the vibration that it inspires on our sensing apparatus of our eyes, as sensitive as they are. Smell also is a vibration, a range of vibration. Odor is a vibration. Taste is a vibration. Touch is a vibration. Touch is maybe the slowest vibration, and why it might be the most profound of senses. If someone slowly touches you like that, that's very intimate because it's very slow. If I'm talking like this, I sound more superficial and informative. If I start talking like this, now my voice is at a slower vibration. We'll make it go deeper. Deepness is a slowness. When somebody said, "There's a moon out tonight," my voice got slower right there. But then when my choice of my cadence of speech get like kind of like slower and harder to understand, you come in closer and hear me better. It's more intimate. So touch is very intimate. But those are all vibration, and so what we perceive is different than the reality. we don't actually experience reality. We perceive reality, and our perception are by means of vibration. But also, you could say that if we do have, I'm not saying that life isn't real and reality isn't real, but if reality is real, we don't perceive it truly as it is, but we have an experience. We perceive it enough to experience it, and our experience is real, and thereby our experience is reality. Then reality is light. That is vibration in the pure sense. The purest of vibration would be light. So God inspired light by his means of his voice. But what came prior to the light was his voice. That is the void, because it says in the Bible there's a void. Your voice is also like a void, because prior to you enunciating, your voice is a potential for your actual, all this life, according to Arthur Avalon, is actually it's a friction apparatus. You make heat, fire, by means of friction. You conceive and transfer energy by means of friction primarily. And life is seething forces within forces, conflicting forces that are checked, that are viable, a buoyancy. But it's competing forces is life. But also, there's no experience of anything without a strain. So actually, for you to talk, you're straining that whole time. That's why your voice is intelligible and hearable, because it's actually a strain. Light also is actually a strain. The sun is very hot. There's like fission in the sun, I think it's called. The way that the sun makes energy by means of fission. That's very hot. A scientist named Fauci and something, they're able to achieve fission at cold. It's called cold fusion, cold fission at very simple cold temperatures that can make energy in a profound way. And there's some mystery about what happened to them after I think they were in Utah, the University of Utah, where they conceded that. I did a research paper about that. But so the sun has actually conflict, fusion, fission, deeper conflict than we can experience, deeper tension and strain and stress to do something as powerful as the heat that it emits, that is the charge and the light. But the charge is a finer grade of that. It is also a vibration, but also a strain. So in the beginning was the void, the potential for anything. Then was the will, but your will is also kind of strained, because for you to make your will, like say you're exercising, you're making your will, your body stronger, you're straining to do that. So you could say that God made the universe out of stress, but that too out of voice. So I'll land this one there with that, but I got more that I want to say with that. And part of what I want to say with that is that, according to Arthur Avalon, I spoke with the scholar Granshi Tashik Bey, and he says that what we have for radio communication is reverse engineered from the human body. What we have for computers is reverse engineered from the human mind. And within both of that, what we have for electricity is also reverse engineered for the human body and its polarity. Then from there, we have light. That's according to the word of God. According to the Bible, God said, let there be light, and there's light, is what we have for light in terms of natural light, the sun. But then what we have for electricity, it comes from the sun, the energy that comes from the sun. But the way that it's managed, wrought, transferred, and applied is by means of also understanding the human body. So the human body actually exists in polarity. That's how we understand all of chemistry, which gives us all of our man-made activities. And physics can also be interpreted in terms of chemistry, because physical corporal reality is an extension of chemistry in the first place. Chemistry, in the most simple terms, is attraction, repulsion, and indifference. That's what's happening with chemical interactions. The bonding and the breaking of bonds and the stability of bonds is chemistry. That's also in terms of electrical terms. That can be understood in terms of electricity, because that's polarity, positive, negative, and neutral, proton, neutron, electron. Anything that we would do in terms of medicine, military, that's also in electrical terms. So the application of our services, science also is in electrical terms. The way that we understand chemistry and what we can do with chemistry and man-made, anything man-made, engineered, and/or the standpoint to do it. Because say you have some brilliant students that are going to make a structure that doesn't take any. It's like they're going to make a bridge out of sticks. But for them to do that, they know that an arc is the strongest. An arc is a lot stronger than a straight line. So like, I come from the Twin Cities, Minnesota. It's two cities on either side of the Mississippi River, St. Paul, Minneapolis. and there's at least 4 or 5, maybe 6, 7 bridges that skirt that in the city area. One of them famously collapsed about 10 years ago, but if you look at them, they're made as an arc. So arcs it's a powerful structure, but if you had some students that are gonna make a bridge, and they're not gonna do anything with technology, just the fact that they were able to sit in a class, right? They were able to sit in warm classes long enough so that they could become educated. They're gonna have food that was cooked and prepared. That's different degrees of technology that it took just for them to be educated enough to do something that doesn't have to do with technology. That man-made, what we can do as men and women on earth, that is to overcome the obstacles of nature. In the modern iteration of technology, that's by means of understanding electricity and chemistry and polarity, and that's by means of the human body. But the reason I reference that is because according to Arthur Avalon, polarity, electricity, as it was understood to the greats, to the people, original pioneers of that, as we know in modern popular education and information, as it's viable and as it's true and not, is that within the last few hundred years, Edison and Tesla were working with that. But the deeper insight is that that's based on the logos also. When God said, let there be light, right? So when you think of that, let there be light, you think of the sun. God said, let there be light, so we have a sun. That's our source of light. But the sun is involved in deep cycles, and it's also viable and not bigger than the cycles it's within, as in all the planetary bodies. The planets, the stars, the solar systems, the galaxies, the nebulas, the clusters, and on like that, maybe multiples of universes. They're locked into and implicated in deep cycles and revolutions, because all things are cyclical. And one of the reasons that I began this video talking about growing up as a child and as an adult, it's a different topic that I want to talk about, but I want to say what's more significant than in understanding human beings than your given government age as a linear number is to understand cycles. So age as a number is arbitrary, because you can have this one over here that takes care of their health, that one that doesn't. Also, people develop differently in their own genetics, but what's not dispensable and what is significant is the cycle of a person or in anything. A better way to understand things is in the cycles within, and cycles aren't one and done. For example, say you have somebody that is like a teenager, right? You have a family, and you're going to visit another family. You have a teenager there, not an upperclassman, say near the beginning of high school, like say 10th grade. Now, by that time, they can understand adult themes, adult topics, adult humor. They can read a lot at the same level as sometimes adult, if not better, sometimes, however, their background and education. But the other family has younger children that are still involved in different forms of toys and pastimes that would be more age appropriate to them as they're there. But that child that's now in early high school is by and large beyond that, but they can still appreciate some of it and enjoy some of it differently than a full-fledged adult could. That shows you that these cycles are, they're cycles within cycles within cycles within cycles, and they're transmitted and transmuted, sublimated, gradually, gently, but also cyclical in cycles, such that one can be in a different phase of the same cycle, or leaving a cycle that another person's in that cycle, and there can be some reciprocity there. As that's with human beings, but also that's with orbits and Earths and on like that, and things that we probably can't perceive, like in terms of energy and fluid dynamics, is that nothing in this life, you actually can't make a straight line in this universe. Nothing in nature is straight. If you observe trees and things like that, there's nothing completely straight in nature, but we as men and women intend and attempt straight lines as an ideal. And that's why I think man-made structures aren't viable by and large, and they will be broken down by nature because they're not viable within the cycles of nature. Another one is that I was beginning this video saying that a lot of our life, we're one of our fetishes, one of the first things we really enjoy is the experience of careening in cars, because it's as fun as running, but also we have the advantage while doing it. So it's a lot of fun in cars. But in our whole life, we're getting up and down cars as we don't actually need to. You could walk a hell of a lot more than you need to, and things could be designed with less of the need for transportation. But as Henry Ford intended to and achieved, he wanted to get the entire world stuck on automobiles, and we still haven't been, since the proliferation of the tycoon Henry Ford, we haven't been weaned from the need of the automobile. We have transcended its need by and large. We have more technology than we did then. We could organize ourselves better, and you're stronger for eating local food, for local medicine, local experiences, local patronizing, local working, local all things are better. But part of our being extended and our fetish and our ideals around like the Joneses, the consumer lifestyle, the mass production, commercialism, materialism, that it's part of and necessitated, but also it champions cars. But cars are not necessarily a normal thing. Going 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, it's not a normal thing. It's enjoyable. It's also the first thing we ever got to experience fun, sometimes riding in buses, cars, joining the freeway, motorcycles, if we got to ride on one, whatnot. But they're not entirely necessary. And there was another YouTuber that said that an actual car is actually a form of a time machine. You wouldn't appreciate that it's an actual time machine. The sophistication of the engine juxtaposed with the turning of the wheel and the axle, and I was saying the sophistication, the deepness of somebody rolling by in a wheelchair, in that the wheelchair body didn't change, their body didn't change, the wheel itself didn't change. It rotated, but it didn't change. That too, the axle rotated, but it didn't change. The ball bearings rotated, but they didn't change. You can't actually point to what actually moved other than they exerted energy. Now they sublimated an energy field. Now they're here. That's actually how chemistry works. Molecules don't actually move. Molecules change position instantly, rapidly. That's what's called quantum, and that's what's that can't be understood by scientists. And their very attention in trying to understand it stifles their ability to understand it, because their attention can bastardize these processes, how subtle things are. If you actually think a certain thought, you can get pissed off and your body changes like that. If you actually pay attention to matter, you can affect matter like that. Small creatures too, birds too, matter itself can be affected by that. I recently was spending time with a pine cone. I had this pine cone, I was holding it. Do you know that I had a female friend, and she would take that pine cone with her at night? That pine cone would actually change its constitution by spending time with that female. The actual pine cone itself, it would look healthier and prettier after spending time with my female friend than with my male self jackass like that. That's an example how matter is affected by at least our mind, attention, and our aura, and what are missed about us. So the molecules, they like when you go from solid to liquid to gas, the water doesn't stop being water. It changes its mode and its appearance and some of its characteristic. That is, it sublimates. So too do molecules and atoms and electrons and elements, atoms and electrons and protons. They don't actually move at any point. It's here, then it's irritated or attracted, and now it's here. There's no changing of position, because if you could say it in a deeper sense, the universe actually is one. There is no difference between anything. There's a difference in appearance, and there's a sensational experience, but all is even though the number one is redundant, because if things are that congruent, the word one has no meaning without the contrast of the spectrum of what's also possible. That's a deeper principle that occurs in the works of Arthur Avalon, is that within any sound that's expressed is all sound immanent. So for example, in English, we have 26 letters in the English alphabet. In the Sanskrit alphabet, there are 51. You cannot make an utterance without the combination of vowel and consonant. Also, you can't move in life without the standpoint of something stable and something active. There has to be something stable to stay and make activity viable. That's the same for a street. The street has to be stable so something can move about it. Your body also has to have a stability for its processes. That's what's called Kundalini. There, in the base of your spine, it's called Kendra. As the universe is in ceaseless motion, so is your body in ceaseless motion activity, but all that has to be stabilized and grounded. That's the base of your spine, your sacrum, and something called Kendra. But it takes energy to stabilize energy. When that stabilizing energy, Kendra, Kundalini, is activated, it becomes active. Now you're completely active, because you're not only stable and active, but you're active and active. You change that much, the whole universe changes, that you would change like that. And there's blessings and propensities that come with that experience of the ascension of Kundalini, the stabilizing energy through the different ranges of consciousness in your body. Because you have different consciousnesses, like you have at least two brains, a creative brain, a logical brain. Sometimes you feel weak in your knees when you're falling in love. Sometimes you're thinking with your this and that. Sometimes you have a feeling in your gut. Sometimes you're doing it from the heart. Sometimes you have a feeling in your voice, like when you got a frog in your throat, because you actually want to say something, but you're not, or you're scared. You have a frog in your throat. Sometimes you can smell an opportunity. Sometimes the eyes, it's a window, so you have different. Sometimes no one can bite their tongue. Sometimes it make your blood hot. So you have a funny bone. So you have different ranges of consciousness in your body. But the atoms and molecules, they never actually move. They transcend position. And that's actually how. So for example, a good example of that is gunpowder, right? If you've ever heard a gun before, that's some mean ass shit. It doesn't go it goes pop. It goes from stable to 1,000,000%, right? That's actually because it transmitted like that. The gunpowder was cool like that. It's just up in somebody's pocket, ready for bullshit like that, with their egregious ass that would fill their pocket with bullets, right? Then they ignited just a little bit of agitation, just a little bit of spark from a hammer, and now because it's changed so much position so rapidly with so much force that the way that it's here inside of this bullet cartridge container, now it's too big to be housed there. So it got expanded, but it didn't gradually expand and move like that. It's here, now it's here. Hey man, there's no room for the fucking bullet. It gotta go somewhere. It go through your ass like that. So that's how things sublimate like that. And so that's a deeper thing, is that about dimensions, is that things actually nothing actually moves, but that actually shows you how congruent and unified the universe is that nothing actually moves. That is, nothing changes. It just sublimates, and that one thing would change, all things accommodate that change. That's also why you can't just have your own relationship somewhere. Romeo and Juliet is actually bullshit if you say that they're just unto themselves, because just like the West Side Story, if two people are lovers, that actually has to be tolerated and sustained and supported and viable by a community, because no one's an individual. So their whole social that's why people are actually player hating your shit sometimes when you have a date, because you're changing that whole environment, just that you're associating with someone, that you're connected, because the whole environment, that much power, that much love between you, love is the greatest power. The whole environment, the whole world, the whole universe has to shift and adjust to accommodate that, because by you coming into love, you changed. The whole existence changed. That's a better way to impact anything, is to change yourself. So if you find love, if you fall in love, if you possess yourself, if you change yourself, now you change all things that are worth changing. But as the logos, but as the stars go, God said, let there be light. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and God was with the Word. But God's salient word was his promise to Abraham, which was to prosper him, his two sons, or his son Isaac, Abraham's son Isaac, Abraham's grandson Jacob, his 12 children, which were the different tribes and families, including that of Judah, which is the line of Jesus Christ himself. And by that promise, the Jewish chosen people, which are the tribes of Judah, the tribes of Jacob, and the non-Jewish people, the Gentiles, and the things that are about the earth and the skies, are all blessed. But that was possible because of Jesus Christ. He allowed the Jewish people themselves to be blessed because they were messing up badly by misunderstanding their own laws and themselves. And the Gentiles were blessed by faith in Jesus Christ and grafting into that promise. But throughout all that, God remains himself. God is God. And God allowed light. The first thing God did that gives us what experience will we have of life without being able to see? Not that it couldn't be done, but how much of life be limited without being able to see? The first thing God did, and I'm saying that scripture got deleted. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and God said, let there be light, more or less like that. I come from the Living Word Church. That also could be synonymous with the living God or the living logos, or just logos. But then for there to be light, he commanded there be light. If a boss says let it be, that's a command. So all the motion of if you can imagine how much force that is. Can you imagine lifting some heavy shit? Imagine lifting 100 pounds. Now imagine lifting the very slab of concrete I'm sitting on. There's this many umpteen slabs of concrete on this side of this cul-de-sac, on that side, the street, the city, the state. How much does the earth itself not weigh? That's a lot of force. But as stifling as you think gravity is, grace is yet greater than gravity. Which is, if there were only gravity pulling us down, we'd be crushed like pancakes. We give ourselves more credit than we think, and also less potential than we think, to think that we're overcoming gravity this whole time by our own means. You also have a tandem force pulling you up, that's called grace. But also in your body, there's something called udana, which is that your torso, which is your stomach and above, your vertebrae and above, as from your lower torso, like your limbs, are they're connected, but they're not exactly the same. So you have a force that's pulling you down, then you also have a force that's pulling you up, and they're in balance, and it allows you to breathe in and out like that. Sometimes you'll see, heaven forbid, in a fight, like in a martial arts, someone will get kicked in their solar plexus. It's interesting that the solar plexus is called solar. That's what allows you to breathe. It also allows you to sing. That's where your diaphragm would be. But if you get kicked there, you get uncalibrated, and you start to choke without anything being wrong with your throat. You choke on your diaphragm. That's a worse form of choking than choking on your throat. You choke on your diaphragm. But that buoyancy of push and pull like that, that's called udana. And that's what gives you the hiccups. That's understood in India. And as I said, in India, they're very talented as a human family, Bharata in general, about a knack for very subtle things, or whether that be music, training for music, art, and or medicine, in what's called Ayurvedic medicine. But they're aware of that principle of udana, of that you're actually being pulled up at all times. That is grace. You're pulling down. That's gravity. The buoyancy that allows you to exist on earth and feel comfortable, that contrast is called udana. But grace is actually more powerful than gravity. Gravity is secondary to grace. Things get going with grace. God is graceful. Then the momentum, because what's an object in motion shall stay in motion unless acted upon. That actual momentum is what I think that most people couldn't actually give you a straight answer. What the hell is gravity? Yes, what goes up must come down. How and why, wherefore, what actually is gravity, and how does it work? A lot of people wouldn't know that. A greater way to know that would be that gravity is inertia, is momentum. So you would say that, okay, if I'm jumping up, how is my momentum making me go down? That's your linear thinking, and thinking that at any time at all, that you're stationary, that you're still, and that you're going up. So you could say that the sophistication of all the molecules of your body going like this, all like this, but also reciprocal with the earth, viable on the earth. That too, under grace, like that. Now there you go, jump. The actual momentum and the habit of your motions are in a way different trajectory and momentum calculus than you can understand in terms of understanding physical reality as it appears to you. That too, linear reality, for lack of a better word, as it appeals to you, and you think of it as an ideal. So as you jump up, you don't see how you actually never did, in fact, jump up in a straight line. You were vibrating like this. You moved away from yourself, but actually your motions are reciprocal with the motions of the earth, as you're accustomed at the wavelength in the vibration of the earth at all times. So that's how you may be in America. You jump up, you get your ass pulled down. You're on the other side of the world, you jump up, you get your ass pulled down. How did that go? Why did you not fall the same direction down as they should have felt up on the other direction? It's because reality doesn't exist as we perceive it, nor does things move the way we perceive it. But gravity is more akin to momentum. Motion, force, energy, effort is more akin to grace. So by grace, God put allow there to be light. The sun is not viable without its position within the broader planetary, interplanetary, solar, intersolar, galactic, nebular, broader star system, whatnot. These actual different buoyancy, black holes, dwarfs, all these different forms of solar activity are cyclical cycles within, because again, nothing is viable in a straight line, because nothing is straight at all. That would be arbitrary, and life is not arbitrary. More profound and dynamic and complex and demanding than to be so simple as to be straight. So God allowed there to be light, but the way that light functions is at the behest of God, the will of God, but not out of order, because God is a God of order. Your voice wouldn't make sense without a certain order within it. And so what I'm saying is that you have night and day. You have creatures of the night, nocturnal. You have creatures of the day, diurnal. Night and day are cyclical, a cycle. If all of life is ceaseless motion, also that too, some of the behavior of molecules and chemicals is a structural thing more than like an inherent value is the structure of the arrangements of the bonds and the energy. The arrangement of the energy is what actually gives it its characteristic and its meaning and its value. The arrangement of it. So if what's called the universe, so I'm saying the universe may be the same as God, but also God is the same as His word, which is also His will, which is also His deeds and statements. So we are what we do, including God is what we do. God is what He does. So if God is His word, what the word says is what the word does,